never thought the day would come when the walls of my home would feel like a prison, echoing with secrets too dark to believe. My heart still trembles when I think about it. The moment I found out that the man I had loved, trusted, and shared a life with had abused our daughter. Not once, not twice, but 8 times. And I had no idea. I remember standing in the middle of our living room, my hands shaking as my daughter finally spoke out. Her lips trembled, her eyes drowned in tears that no child should ever cry. The words she whispered crushed my soul like a hammer smashing glass. Mom, Dad hurt me. Not once. 8 times. At first, my mind refused to accept it. My husband, the man I cooked for, the man who prayed beside me, the man I thought was protecting us? My body went cold. My legs weakened. I felt as though the ground had opened beneath me, ready to swallow me whole. I screamed so loudly, I feared the neighbors would come running. My chest pounded, my throat burned, and I could barely breathe. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. I wanted to tell my daughter she must have made a mistake. But her eyes, those innocent, broken eyes, told me the truth. I ran to the bedroom we had shared for more than 20 years, tore open his drawers, and searched for something, anything, to tell me it was a lie. But instead, I found what I wasn't ready for. Hidden letters, scribbles in his handwriting, filled with guilt, apologies to himself, excuses he had written but never spoken aloud. Proof. My hands shook as I read them, my tears smudging the ink. Each word cut me deeper. He knew what he had done. He knew it was wrong. And yet he did it again, and again, until it reached 8 times. I fell to the floor, my whole body trembling, whispering to myself. How could I not know? How could I not see? The shame, the anger, the heartbreak, it was all too much. My daughter's sobs from the next room pierced through me like knives. I wanted to confront him right there, to scream at him, to throw his lies in his face. But he wasn't home yet. And as I sat there, holding the papers in my hands, listening to the clock tick louder and louder on the wall, I knew that any moment, the door would open, and he would walk in. And when he did, when the man who destroyed my family walked through that door, what I saw in his eyes made my blood run cold. The moment the front door creaked open, my whole body stiffened. I clutched the papers tighter in my trembling hands, my ears straining to catch the sound of his footsteps. The same footsteps I had once waited for with joy, when love filled our home, and I thought my family was safe. Now, those same steps sounded like the march of a stranger, an enemy creeping into my house. He entered, whistling softly, tossing his keys on the table the way he always did, as though nothing in the world was wrong. But when his eyes met mine, oh those eyes, I felt ice crawl down my spine. They weren't the eyes of the husband I had once known. There was something there, something dark, as if he knew that I knew. My throat went dry. My lips quivered. I wanted to scream, to throw the letters in his face, to drag him by his collar and demand he confess. But my daughter's sobs still echoed in my ears. She was in the next room, fragile, broken and scared. I had to protect her. I had to be careful. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked, his voice calm, almost mocking. He tilted his head, pretending to be confused, but his smile did not reach his eyes. I stood up slowly, still clutching the letters. My heart thumped against my ribs so loudly I was sure he could hear it. You, I whispered, my voice breaking. What have you done? He froze. For the first time in all our years of marriage, he didn't answer me immediately. He glanced at the papers in my hands, and I saw it. The flicker of recognition, the fear he tried to hide. He knew exactly what I had found. My knees weakened, but I forced myself to stand tall. She told me. I continued, tears streaming down my face. Our daughter told me everything. 8 times. 8 times, and I didn't know. How could you? For a moment, silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. Then to my horror he chuckled. A low, bitter laugh that sent chills through my bones. So she finally opened her mouth, he said. I wondered how long it would take. My heart shattered all over again. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't begging for forgiveness. He wasn't even ashamed. He admitted it with the casual cruelty of a man who had no soul left to lose. You monster! I screamed, my voice echoing through the walls. She's your daughter. How could you do this to her? To me, to this family. His face darkened, and he stepped closer. For the first time, I realized how dangerous he truly was. Not just to my daughter, but to me too. He towered over me, his jaw clenched, his fists tightening at his sides. "Don't you dare call me a monster," he hissed. "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand." I stumbled back, shaking my head. "Don't understand? Don't understand." My voice cracked with rage. "I understand enough. You destroyed her. You destroyed us." My daughter's soft sobs grew louder from the next room, and I knew she could hear everything. I wanted to shield her from his voice, from his presence, from his evil. I wanted to run to her, to hold her tight and promise she would never have to face him again. But before I could move, he grabbed my wrist. His grip was iron, his nails digging into my skin. "Listen to me," he growled, his breath hot against my face. "If you tell anyone, if you breathe a word of this to the outside world, I will make sure neither of you survive it. Do you hear me?" I gasped, trying to pull away, but he held tighter. Fear surged through me like fire. But so did something else. Anger, fierce and blazing. For too long I had been blind. For too long I had trusted him. But now I knew the truth, and I would not let him win. I ripped my hand free, shoving him back with all the strength I had left. "Get out!" I shouted, my voice shaking the walls. "Get out of this house. You don't belong here anymore." His eyes widened in shock at my defiance. For a second he looked almost human again, almost like the man I had once loved. But then the mask returned and he sneered. "This is my house too," he spat. "You can't push me out. You're nothing without me." Before I could reply, my daughter's cry pierced through the room. "Mom! Help!" The sound tore through me, stronger than any fear. I ran past him into her room, my heart racing. She was curled in the corner of her bed, trembling like a leaf. When she saw him standing in the doorway, her whole body shook with terror. "Don't let him touch me again," she begged, clutching at my dress. I wrapped my arms around her, glaring at him with all the hatred in my soul. "You will never touch her again," I swore. "Not while I'm alive." He stared at us, his chest rising and falling, his fists tightening again. For a moment I thought he would lunge at us. My body tensed, ready to fight, ready to defend my daughter with every ounce of strength I had. But then, to my shock, he turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him so hard the walls rattled. I held my daughter close, rocking her gently, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "You're safe now, baby. I won't let him hurt you again. I swear." But deep inside, fear gnawed at me. He was still in the house. He still had power. And I knew this battle was only beginning. As the night grew darker, I stayed awake, listening to his heavy footsteps pacing the living room. My daughter finally fell asleep in my arms, but I couldn't close my eyes. Every creak, every sound made me jump. My mind raced with questions. Should I call the police? Should I pack our things and run? Could I even protect her if he tried again? The hours crawled by, and dawn began to creep through the curtains. My body was exhausted, but my spirit burned with determination. I had to act. I had to save her no matter the cost. I carefully laid her down, tucked her under the blanket, and kissed her forehead. Then I stepped quietly into the living room. He was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands, muttering to himself. For the first time I saw guilt flash across his face, but it wasn't enough. Nothing could erase the horror of what he had done. I opened my mouth to tell him it was over, that I was taking our daughter and leaving forever. But before I could speak, he looked up at me with wild, desperate eyes and said something that froze my blood in my veins. "You think you know everything," he whispered. "But there's more. So much more. And if you leave, the truth will destroy us all." And that was when I realized this nightmare was only beginning. His words hung in the air like a storm cloud. "There's more. So much more. And if you leave, the truth will destroy us all." For a moment, I could not move. My legs shook as if they no longer belonged to me. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. There he was, my husband of more than 2 decades, confessing not only his crime but hinting at a darkness even deeper, something I had not yet uncovered. I clutched the wall to steady myself. "What do you mean by that?" I whispered, though every part of me feared the answer. He leaned forward on the couch, his eyes hollow yet sharp, like a predator toying with its prey. "You think you know everything now," he said quietly. "But you don't. You've only scratched the surface. If you try to leave, if you try to expose me, the whole family will fall apart. Not just you and me, everyone." My skin prickled. His voice carried a strange calmness, the kind that made my stomach churn. I wanted to scream, to strike him, to drag my daughter and run into the night. But I was trapped between fear and confusion. "What do you mean, everyone?" I demanded, though my voice trembled. "What else have you done?" Instead of answering, he gave me a long, cold smile. "You'll find out soon enough." I staggered back, my heart hammering so violently I thought it would burst. My daughter's soft cry from the bedroom reminded me of what truly mattered. I rushed back to her side, shutting the door firmly behind me. She sat up in bed, eyes swollen from tears, her small hands clutching the blanket like it was her shield. "Mom, what did he say?" she asked in a whisper. I forced a smile I did not feel, brushing her hair from her face. "Nothing that matters, baby. Nothing that matters. What matters is that I'm here, and I'm not going to let him hurt you anymore." But even as I spoke, doubt gnawed at me. What if he was right? What if there was more? And what if uncovering it would destroy everything we had left? The night dragged on, heavy with silence broken only by the sound of his pacing in the living room. Every creak of the floorboard made me jump. I barely slept, holding my daughter close, listening for the slightest hint of danger. My mind raced with questions. Should I run to the police? But what if they didn't believe us? Should I confide in a neighbor? But what if word spread and shamed my daughter more than she could bear? When the sun finally rose, it brought no peace. My husband was gone. His keys and wallet were missing, but his words remained, echoing in my mind. That morning I made a decision. I could no longer remain silent. I had to find out the truth, the more he had hinted at, before it was too late. I kissed my daughter's forehead and told her to stay inside, to lock the doors, and not to open them for anyone except me. Her frightened eyes followed me as I left, and my heart ached, but I knew I had no choice. I went to the small wooden chest we kept in the storage room, the one where we stored old family documents and photo albums. If there were secrets, I thought, they would be hidden there. I dug through papers, dusty photographs, and old letters. My fingers trembled as I flipped through each piece, desperate for answers. Then I found it. A small notebook, leather-bound, its pages filled with his handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. At first, it looked like a journal, filled with ramblings, confessions, even prayers. But as I read deeper, my blood ran cold. He had written about his struggles, his urges, his twisted justifications. He wrote of moments when he almost lost control, of times when he did lose control, of how he convinced himself it was not his fault. Tears blurred my vision as I read line after line. It was worse than I imagined. Not only had he hurt our daughter, he had thought about it for years. He had planned it. He had excused it. And worst of all, he hinted at other times, other victims, words I could barely bring myself to understand. My stomach churned. I dropped the notebook as if it were fire, my hands shaking violently. My God, what had I married? What kind of man had I let into my home, into my family, into my child's life? At that moment, I heard a sound that froze me in place, the front door creaking open. Panic surged through me. I grabbed the notebook, shoved it under my dress, and rushed back to the bedroom. My daughter was awake, her eyes wide with fear. "Is he back?" she whispered. I pressed a finger to my lips, urging her to stay silent. Heavy footsteps moved through the hallway. He was home. My heart pounded in my chest as his shadow appeared under the bedroom door. I held my daughter close, my body trembling, waiting for him to burst in. But instead, the footsteps retreated. The front door slammed shut again. I let out a shaky breath. He was gone. For now. That evening, I sat with my daughter at the kitchen table. I held her hand, tears filling my eyes. "Baby," I said softly, "we have to be brave. We can't stay here anymore. We have to go." Her eyes widened. "Where will we go, Mom?" I swallowed hard. I had no answer. I had no family nearby, no close friends I could trust, No money saved for running away. But I knew one thing. Anywhere was safer than here. Before I could explain further, we heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. My daughter's grip on my hand tightened. "It's him," she whispered. Fear gripped me, but I forced myself to stand tall. I could not let him see my weakness again. I had to protect her. The door opened, and he stepped inside, his face dark, his eyes wild. He looked at me, then at our daughter, and for the first time, I saw something like desperation in his eyes. "You think you can leave me?" he said, his voice low and trembling. "You think you can take her away from me? If you try, you'll regret it. Both of you." My daughter gasped, clinging to my arm. I stood between them, my heart pounding, my fists clenched. "You will never touch her again," I said firmly. "Do you hear me? Never." His face twisted with rage, and he took a step forward. My body stiffened, ready to fight with everything I had. But then, suddenly, there was a loud knock at the door. All three of us froze. The knock came again, louder this time. "Open up," a voice called from outside. "It's the police." My husband's face drained of color. He turned to me, his eyes wide with panic, and I realized in that moment, someone had found out. Someone had reported him. And just like that, our world was about to explode. The pounding at the door made the walls tremble. My heart skipped a beat. My daughter's small fingers dug into my arm as she whispered, "Mom, it's the police. What if he tells them lies? What if they don't believe us?" I swallowed the knot in my throat and held her close. "Shh, baby. No matter what happens, we tell the truth. That's all we can do." But inside, I was trembling. I had no idea what the truth would bring. My husband stood frozen in the middle of the living room, his face pale and his hands clenched at his sides. He looked like a cornered animal, desperate and dangerous. The knock came again, louder this time. "Police! Open the door." For a moment, none of us moved. Then he turned to me, his eyes blazing. "Say nothing," he hissed. "Do you hear me? Nothing." I felt my knees weaken, but I forced myself forward. My daughter clung to me, her tiny body pressed against my side. As I opened the door, two officers stood outside, one tall and stern, the other younger with kind eyes. The tall one glanced past me into the house. "We received a call," he said firmly. A neighbor reported loud shouting, possibly domestic violence. "Is everything all right here, ma'am?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no words came out. My husband's presence loomed behind me, his breath hot on my neck. I could feel his silent warning pressing against my skin. "Yes," I forced out, my voice shaky. We just had an argument. Nothing more." The younger officer studied my face carefully. "Are you sure? You seem upset." His gaze dropped to my daughter, who was half hidden behind my dress. Her red eyes, her trembling body, she looked like a frightened bird. My husband stepped forward quickly, plastering a smile on his face. "Everything is fine, officers. Just a family matter. Thank you for your concern." The tall officer's eyes narrowed. "Sir, we'd still like to step inside and make sure." Panic surged through me. If they came in, would I have the courage to tell them the truth? Or would my husband's threats seal my lips again? Before I could answer, my daughter tugged on my hand. Her small voice rose, barely above a whisper, but enough for the officers to hear. "Please don't leave us." The younger officer's eyes widened. He stepped closer. "Ma'am, may we come inside?" I hesitated only a moment before stepping back. "Yes, please." They entered, their presence filling the room with authority. My husband stiffened, his jaw tightening, but he said nothing. "Ma'am," the tall officer said, "can we speak to you and your daughter privately?" "Yes," I whispered, nodding quickly. My husband started to protest, but the officer raised his hand. "Sir, please stay here. We'll speak with you afterwards." I led them to the bedroom, where my daughter sat on the bed, her small frame shaking. The younger officer knelt down to her level, his voice gentle. "Sweetheart, are you safe here?" Her eyes darted to me, then to the door where her father lurked outside. She shook her head. Tears filled my eyes. My voice cracked as I finally said the words I had been choking on. "No. She's not safe. We're not safe." Please help us. The confession broke something inside me, but it also lit a fire. For the first time, I had said it out loud. For the first time, someone else knew. The officers exchanged a look. The younger one nodded, pulling out his notepad. Ma'am, I need you to tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. And so I began. My voice shook, my tears fell, but I told them about my daughter's whispers in the night, about the hidden letters I found, about the threats he made, about the 8 times she had been harmed under my very roof without me knowing. Each word felt like ripping open a wound, but I forced myself to keep speaking. My daughter cried softly beside me, clutching my hand. It's true, she whispered. He did it. He said if I told anyone, he'd hurt Mom too. The officers' faces hardened. The younger one placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You're very brave for telling us this, he said softly. The tall officer stood. Stay here, he ordered. Then both men left the room, their heavy boots echoing down the hallway. I held my daughter close, my heart pounding. Through the door we heard muffled voices, firm, commanding, then raised, angry. My husband's voice, shouting, denying, swearing. The officers, calm but unyielding. Then a crash, the sound of something falling. My daughter buried her face in my chest, trembling. Moments later, the tall officer returned. His face was serious. Ma'am, we're taking him into custody tonight. But I need you to understand. This won't be easy. There will be investigations, court hearings, questions. Are you ready for that? I nodded, though fear clawed at my insides. I'll do whatever it takes. Just keep him away from us. The younger officer smiled gently. We will. They escorted my husband out of the house in handcuffs. He fought, he shouted, his eyes burning into me as he passed. You'll regret this, he screamed. Both of you. You think you're safe, but you're not. This isn't over. His words chilled me, but as the doors slammed shut behind them, a heavy silence fell. For the first time in years, the house felt empty. My daughter and I sat together on the couch, holding each other, trembling. We should have felt safe. We should have felt relief. But deep inside, I knew it was only the beginning. The days that followed blurred together. Police interviews, social workers, questions I never thought I'd have to answer. My daughter cried often, her sleep haunted by nightmares. I tried to be strong, to hold her hand through every moment, but inside I was breaking. At night, when she finally drifted off, I sat alone in the dark, staring at the notebook I had hidden away. I hadn't given it to the police yet. I couldn't bring myself to. Something in those pages felt like a key, like there was more hidden there than I had dared to read. One night, unable to resist, I opened it again. My hand shook as I flipped through the pages. And then I found it. An entry that made my blood run cold. He had written about others. Not just our daughter. Words vague but chilling. The urges didn't start here. She wasn't the first. She won't be the last if I can't control myself. My stomach twisted. My God, what if there were other victims? What if there were children out there suffering because of him? The thought made me sick. I clutched the notebook to my chest, tears streaming down my face. I knew I had to tell the police, but part of me was terrified. What if this truth was too big? What if it destroyed not just our family but others too? As I sat there, lost in my thoughts, a noise shattered the silence. The sound of glass breaking at the back of the house. I froze. My daughter stirred in the bedroom, murmuring in her sleep. My hands went cold. Someone was in the house. I grabbed my daughter, pulling her from bed, my heart racing. We crouched in the corner of the room, my arms wrapped tightly around her, as footsteps crept closer and closer. And then I heard his voice, low, furious, and unmistakable. You thought you could get rid of me. But I'm back. The sound of his voice slithered through the dark house like a snake. My heart jumped into my throat. My daughter's trembling hand clutched mine so tightly I thought our bones might break together. You thought you could get rid of me, he hissed from somewhere beyond the doorway. But I'm back. Every muscle in my body stiffened. My mind screamed at me to move, to act, but my legs felt like stone. I pressed my daughter closer, whispering in her ear, "Stay quiet, baby. Don't make a sound." We crouched in the shadows of the room, the faint moonlight creeping through the curtains casting pale shapes on the wall. My ears strained for every sound, his heavy footsteps against broken glass, The groan of floorboards, the rasp of his breathing. I thought of the police, of the handcuffs snapping around his wrists, of the car driving away into the night. I had dared to believe we were safe. But somehow he was here. Out. Free. Or maybe escaped. I didn't know which was worse. My daughter's lips trembled against my ear. Mom. I'm scared. I know, baby. I know. My arms tightened around her. My heart ached at the innocence in her voice, the raw terror. She should have been dreaming of childhood, of laughter, of play, not of hiding from the man meant to protect her. I scanned the room for anything I could use to defend us. My eyes landed on the heavy lamp beside the bed. My hand reached for it slowly, my fingers wrapping around its cold base. I had never held a weapon before, but tonight I was ready. If he came near my daughter, I would not hesitate. His footsteps grew closer. The handle of the bedroom door rattled once, twice. Then silence. I held my breath, every nerve in my body alive with fear. My daughter buried her face in my chest, muffling a sob. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence. The sound of a door slamming somewhere else in the house. I flinched, nearly dropping the lamp. He was moving through the rooms, hunting us, like a predator circling its prey. Memories rushed over me, unbidden and sharp. The first time I met him, his smile, his soft words, the way he promised to love me forever. How proud he had been when our daughter was born, cradling her with tears in his eyes. I had trusted that man. I had loved that man. And now he was the monster in our home, the shadow in the night, the threat to everything I held dear. The sound of his footsteps returned, closer, heavier. This time they stopped right outside the door. His voice was low, almost taunting. I know you're in there. You can't hide from me. My daughter whimpered. I pressed a hand gently over her lips, tears spilling down my cheeks. My mind raced. Should I scream for help? Should I fight? Should I pray he would leave? The doorknob turned slowly, the metal squealing. My pulse thundered in my ears. But then, before the door opened, flashing blue lights spilled across the curtains. A voice rang out from outside. Police! Come out with your hands where we can see them. Relief and terror collided inside me. The police were here, but so was he. He cursed under his breath. The doorknob released. His footsteps pounded down the hall. The sound of shouts, pounding fists on the front door, and his desperate movements filled the house. I pulled my daughter to her feet. Come on, I whispered fiercely. We ran to the closet, squeezed inside, and shut the door. My heart hammered as I held her against me in the darkness. The noise outside grew louder, the police demanding he surrender, the crash of something breaking, his angry voice shouting back. Then silence. A gunshot split the night. My daughter screamed into my chest, shaking violently. I clutched her tighter, my own body trembling. My mind raced. Had they shot him? Had he shot them? Was it over, or only just beginning? The sound of boots thundered through the house. Doors opened, voices called out. Mom? Are you in here? It's safe now. I hesitated. Was it truly safe? Or was this another trap? Another moment of false hope? But then the closet door swung open and the young officer, the one with kind eyes, knelt before us. His face was firm but gentle. You're all right now. We've got him. Relief washed over me in a flood so heavy I nearly collapsed. I helped my daughter out of the closet, holding her tightly as tears poured down my cheeks. The officer guided us into the living room. My husband was on the floor, face pressed to the carpet, handcuffed, his mouth bleeding from a cut. His eyes burned into me with fury. This isn't over, he spat, his voice low and venomous. The officers dragged him out, his words echoing behind him like a curse. I sank onto the couch, my daughter in my arms. My body shook from exhaustion and fear, but my spirit clung to one thought. We had survived another night. But deep inside, I knew the battle was far from over. There would be courtrooms, accusations, questions from strangers who didn't understand. There would be whispers, shame, and long nights of fear. Still, I looked down at my daughter, her tear-streaked face pressed against me, and I whispered a promise. No matter what comes, I will fight for you. I will never stop. For a brief moment, I believed it. For a brief moment, I thought we might finally find peace. But peace is fragile. And as the days ahead unfolded, I would learn that the greatest storm had yet to come. The night after they dragged him out of the house, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the dark with my daughter wrapped in my arms, rocking her back and forth as if I could soothe away the nightmare we were living in. The silence of the house was deafening. For years, his presence had filled every corner, heavy and suffocating, and now the air felt both lighter and unbearably empty. When morning came, the phone calls started. Police, social workers, lawyers. I answered each one with a trembling hand. Each voice carried questions, forms, procedures. Words like evidence, custody, trial. My head spun. I was no longer just a wife or a mother. I was the key witness in a case that would rip our family apart in front of the world. My daughter clung to me constantly. She didn't want to be in a room alone, not even to use the bathroom. The police arranged a counselor for her, but when the woman arrived, my little girl just stared at her shoes, mute, clutching my hand until her knuckles turned white. I wanted to tell the counselor everything myself, but they insisted it had to come from her, in her own words. I hated the system for asking her to relive what should never have happened. Weeks passed like a blur. Court dates were set. I found myself sitting in small, cold rooms with lawyers who explained things I barely understood. They told me he had pled not guilty. That meant there would be a trial. That meant he would sit in front of me, stare at me, deny everything, and force my daughter and me to testify. The thought made me physically sick. The first day in court, I dressed my daughter in her best dress, the one with little flowers on it, as if armor made of innocence could protect her. We walked through the tall courthouse doors together, my knees shaking, her small hand warm in mine. Reporters swarmed outside, shouting questions, cameras flashing. Did you know? How could this happen under your roof? What kind of mother are you? Their words cut deeper than any knife. I wanted to scream that I hadn't known. That I wasn't the monster here. That I was broken too. But I kept my head down, shielding my daughter, and walked inside. The courtroom was colder than I imagined. High ceilings, wooden benches, the smell of paper and polish. When they brought him in, my breath caught. He wore a suit, his hair combed, his face calm. He looked almost like the man I once loved. But when his eyes met mine, the mask slipped. The fury, the hatred, the promise of revenge burned there, hidden from everyone else but clear as day to me. The prosecutor stood tall, her voice firm as she outlined the charges. 8 counts of abuse against a minor, she said. The words rang in my ears, sharp and heavy. My daughter's hand shook in mine. He sat at the defense table, stone-faced, shaking his head slightly as if to say, "It's all lies." Then came the defense lawyer. A sharp man in a crisp suit, his words slick as oil. "This is a case of exaggeration," he said smoothly. "A family dispute blown out of proportion. A bitter wife, a confused child. We will show you the truth." I wanted to leap from my seat and scream. Bitter wife. Confused child? My daughter was not confused. She was hurt. She was broken. And I was here to fight for her. The first days of testimony were grueling. Doctors, psychologists, police officers. Each spoke in terms clinical and cold, stripping our pain into evidence and reports. My daughter had to testify too. Watching her sit in that big chair, her feet not even reaching the floor, her small voice trembling as she answered questions, shattered me. She glanced at me often, her eyes begging for reassurance. I mouthed the same words again and again. "You're brave. I'm here." Then it was my turn. I took the stand, swearing an oath that felt heavy as iron. The prosecutor asked me to recount everything. The nights of suspicion, the notebook I had found, the fear in my daughter's eyes, the moment I finally called for help. My voice shook, but I told the truth. Every word felt like a wound reopening, but I forced myself to keep speaking. Then came the defense's turn. The lawyer's questions were sharp, cruel. "Mrs. Williams, how could you not know what was happening under your own roof? Isn't it true that you ignored the signs? That you are now blaming your husband to cover your own failures as a mother?" His words pierced me. Tears welled in my eyes. For a moment, I felt the weight of guilt crushing me. But then I looked at my daughter, her tear-streaked face watching me from the bench, and strength surged back. I lifted my head. "I didn't know," I said firmly, my voice breaking but strong. But the moment I did, I fought. and I will keep fighting until my last breath. Because my daughter deserves safety. She deserves a life free of fear. And no amount of blaming me will change what he did. The courtroom was silent. The lawyer smirked, but I saw doubt flicker in the jury's eyes. Days turned into weeks. Each time I stepped into that courtroom, I felt like I was stepping into a battlefield. Every word, every glance was a weapon. My husband sat there, calm and calculating, sometimes smirking at me, sometimes glaring. His presence alone was enough to make my skin crawl. Then came the day that shattered me all over again. The prosecutor brought out new evidence. That notebook I had found, the one I had hesitated to hand over, had been analyzed. Pages I hadn't dared to read were presented in court. And what they revealed, he had written about others. Not just our daughter. Notes, vague but unmistakable, about children from years ago. She wasn't the first, one line read. And she might not be the last. Gasps filled the courtroom. My hands shook violently as I listened. My daughter buried her face in her hands, sobbing. But then the defense lawyer stood with a sly smile. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "these writings are not confessions. They are fantasies, disturbed thoughts at best. There is no proof that any other victims exist." The judge frowned but allowed the statement. My stomach churned. Fantasies? No. Those words were real. They meant something. But I had no way to prove it. As the trial dragged on, rumors spread. People in town whispered that maybe I had known. That maybe I had stayed silent for years. That I was as guilty as he was. Friends I had known for decades avoided me in the grocery store. Some looked at me with pity, others with judgment. At night, my daughter cried herself to sleep, and I sat awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if we would ever escape this nightmare. Then, one afternoon, the prosecutor called me into her office. She closed the door, her face grave. "We've received a letter," she said, sliding an envelope across the desk. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were shaky words, written in a child's handwriting. "He hurt me too," it read. "Please don't let him out." My breath caught. Tears blurred my vision. Another child. Another victim. The prosecutor's voice was low. "This changes everything. But it also complicates the trial. If this comes to light, the defense will fight harder than ever. They'll tear apart every word, every memory. You need to prepare yourself for what's coming." I clutched the letter to my chest, sobbing. My heart ached for the unknown child, for the pain that echoed our own. My mind reeled with questions. Who was this? Where were they now? How many more were there? I walked out of that office with the weight of the world pressing down on me. My daughter clung to my side, asking what was wrong, but I couldn't tell her. Not yet. That night, as I lay awake, I heard the wind rattling the windows. My daughter slept fitfully beside me. And then in the silence I noticed something that froze my blood. A shadow moved outside the window. Slow. Deliberate. Watching. My breath caught. My heart pounded. I whispered to myself, "It can't be him. He's locked away." But then clear as day I heard it. A low voice drifting through the glass. "You can't hide the truth forever." I never imagined my life would carry this much pain. I never imagined the man I once loved, the man I trusted with my heart, would become the monster who tore our family apart. The truth was uglier than anything I had the strength to dream. And when it finally came out, it shattered me in ways I still struggle to explain. The courtroom battles dragged on for months, but in the end, the truth had more power than his lies. Witnesses came forward. Evidence surfaced. And finally, after everything we endured, the gavel came down. Guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to spend the rest of his life behind bars. But victory did not feel like victory. There were no cheers, no relief. Only exhaustion, only scars. My daughter's childhood had been stolen. My trust in people had been broken. Our home no longer felt like home. And even with him gone, his shadow lingered in every corner. For a long time, I blamed myself. I replayed the years in my head, searching for the signs I missed, the moments I should have asked more questions, the nights I should have stayed awake. But slowly, through therapy, through prayer, through holding my daughter's hand and watching her learn to smile again, I began to understand. The blame was not mine. The shame was not mine. The burden of guilt belonged only to him. I learned something in the fire of that suffering. Silence protects the abuser, never the abused. The moment I broke the silence, everything began to change. Painfully, yes. Brutally. But it was the first step toward healing, the first step toward saving my daughter, and maybe even others we will never know about. Today, I live with wounds that may never fully close. But I also live with a new kind of strength. My daughter and I are still here. We are still breathing, still moving forward. She laughs now, sometimes softly, sometimes with a joy that reminds me she is stronger than the storm that tried to destroy her. If you hear anything in my story, let it be this: listen. Listen to the whispers of your children, to the things they do not say. Do not dismiss their fears, do not brush aside their tears. Because monsters do not always live under beds. Sometimes they live under the same roof, hiding behind the mask of love. And if you ever find yourself in my shoes, broken, ashamed, afraid, please do not stay silent. Speak. Fight. Run if you must, but never stop protecting the innocent. Silence is the enemy of healing. The secret that broke me will never be forgotten. But it also transformed me. I am no longer the quiet wife who looked away. I am the mother who stood up, who spoke out, who chose her daughter's life over her own comfort. And though the scars remain, we walk forward together, hand in hand, carrying the lesson carved into our souls. The truth may break you, but it is the only thing that can set you free.